Thank you very much, Katie, and it's a pleasure to be here joining you today. I wanted to start off by giving a huge thank you to all staff for their dedication and professionalism during COVID. I know this continues to be a uniquely challenging time, with many staff having to do sensitive and difficult work from their homes. And I also appreciate that they're switching from their normal responsibilities at the same time as children have been out of school. I'm really grateful for the flexibility you've all shown in continuing and the service you provide to keep the public safe, help those you supervise, and more important than ever, support one another in your work. We've been working with Napo and other recognised trade unions throughout this difficult period, taking on board their comments. We're very grateful for the continued engagement that Napo have offered. And I know that Amy Rees, Director General of Probation and Wales, has very much valued the engagement that she's had with you. I also want to welcome the news that CRC members of Napo and Unison have voted overwhelmingly in favour of accepting the staff transfer agreement that's been the subject of a recent ballot. I'm extremely pleased with this, and it's another example of a successful negotiation with the unions and a good agreement for staff, which provides a good foundation for the integration of all probation services back into the NPS in 2021. I know that over the years, a minister or a Secretary of State has always addressed the Napo AGM, and it's been a standing event in our calendar. This isn't just a formality. I wanted to be here, and I'm sure it's been the same for all my predecessors, because Napo has been an important constant for the probation service, a thread of continuity that goes back to probation's earliest days. I meet with Ian regularly, as my predecessors have done with his. And I know that he knows that our conversations don't just simply represent, for us, on his part, a block of people. I know he represents an exceptional depth and breadth of professional insight and expertise. And more than that, he represents a set of values that are innate to the profession. Innovation in probation practice, challenges to race disparity and gender discrimination, or analysis of the shortcomings of the justice system have all been the hallmarks of Napo's work over the decades. It has built these by nurturing a strong set of professional standards and the values and ethos of its members. And while Napo can adopt a robust or even diametrically opposing position to things that the government might want to do or to change, to me, it doesn't mean that we value the relationship less. In politics and in government, we expect to be challenged. It's the quality of the challenge that's important. And it's also where we acknowledge the common ground that we share, safer communities, an individual's ability to take their place in society, or greater equality of opportunity and outcome. I'd like to start by talking now about the probation's response to COVID. At the outset of the pandemic, Napo signed up with HMPPS and other NPS recognised trade unions to work collaboratively and supportively throughout the coronavirus outbreak to ensure all NPS staff are kept safe as they support our operational priorities. These have included maintaining stability in APs and LDUs, protecting life, and ensuring that those in our care continue to be supported and rehabilitated with dignity and respect. I was particularly impressed with this early commitment, and I'm very pleased to say that I feel Napo have remained true to it. I want to reassure you that staff safety and well-being are absolutely at the centre of how we approach recovery from COVID. We are only reopening workplaces where it is safe to do so, and where we can be sure that they are COVID secure environments. This includes social distancing, appropriate provision of PPE, and effective ventilation. I've been so impressed to hear of the innovative and thoughtful work being done by staff across all regions. I know this has included a number of things, some excellent partnership working with local authority partners, especially in those areas where local lockdowns have been introduced. This has been critical to ensuring that the return to lockdown in these areas is as smooth as possible with clear communication throughout. Thoughtful collaboration between CRC and NPS regarding shared offices and recovery work, and service user surveys and staff engagement forums to understand the impact that COVID has had to better inform our response. And all your hard work is paying off. Over 80% of NPS offices are now open, and socially distant office visits now account for around 20% of contacts and continue to show signs of increasing gradually. Nationally, accredited programme delivery is at 35% of pre-COVID sessions, and unpaid work delivery is at 39%. This is a huge increase from almost no delivery being possible at the height of the lockdown, and reflects the significant work to find safe ways of doing these activities. The phased reopening of the few APs that were closed is underway and subject to a thorough business readiness assessment process, including sign-off by Public Health England. During COVID, 7 homelessness prevention teams have been working with local authorities and other partners to find accommodation for offenders released from prison, and the task forces are still active. The Ministry of Justice also secured up to £8.5 million to support individuals at risk of homelessness on their release from prison and help them to move on into permanent accommodation. At the height of the lockdown, probation was in many cases one of the few services available to offenders. Many of you will be aware that the 29th of September was Hidden Heroes Day, a fitting day organised by Butler Trust in partnership with HMPPS to celebrate the outstanding work of our staff, particularly during this challenging time. This was a great opportunity to reflect upon and celebrate the contribution that HMPPS staff have made. COVID has shown us how well and how quickly we can adapt to a crisis by being more flexible and deploying smarter ways of working. We've learned a lot from changes under the Probation Service's exceptional delivery model. The rollout of IT hardware and mobile phones alone have transformed ways of working and illustrated how flexible we can and should be. Looking to the future of probation delivery, we intend to issue guidance about managing outcomes rather than about physical presence in the office. Probation staff should have the flexibility to work from office hubs and space at home, and to contact service users how they feel is most effective and impactful, making the best use of technology to do so. It's clear that the need for physical presence across the business varies, and depending on the requirements of specific roles and business requirements, some remote working will become the norm for many as part of a move to smarter working. It's also clear that some areas of probation will find it easier to implement smarter and remote working practices than others. That said, we're being ambitious, and we want to encourage all teams to have conversations about what aspects of this will and won't be possible. We'll be regularly reviewing how this is working in practice across probation. A smarter working toolkit is in development, which gives advice and tips on how to do this most effectively, though we anticipate that our full remote working aspirations will only be possible to implement once we're in the recovery stages of our COVID response. I'd like to turn to the workforce programme. Staff are the probation's greatest asset. They are crucial to ensuring we can continue to play a vital role in reducing reoffending. The probation workforce programme focuses specifically on ensuring that we will have the right people in the right roles with the right training. Probation officer numbers are approaching a 4-year high and are at the second highest level since 2014. We are recruiting 1,000 more probation officers this year alone, of which over 500 are already in training. We are well on track, and it's fantastic to see a recent campaign to recruit trainee probation officers generated more than 6,000 applications in just over 4 weeks, exceeding its target by 250%. We want the probation service to be a rich, fulfilling, and rewarding place to work, and we are determined to invest in the skills, capability, and ways of working to enable probation officers to do their jobs to the highest standard. I share Napo's desire for a fully diverse and inclusive NPS, where all staff are treated fairly and equally, and where those with protected characteristics enjoy a career without fear of prejudice or discrimination. In July this year, we published the Probation Workforce Strategy. The vision of the strategy applies equally to all our workforce, regardless of where they work in their system. The 3-year overview sets out how we will invest in the probation workforce across 6 areas: skills, recruitment, retention, diversity, leadership, and well-being, and sets out our ambition for a positive, inclusive, and diverse workforce. We will attract and retain talented people from across diverse backgrounds with wide-ranging experience. We will support them to develop their skills in an inclusive environment that inspires and empowers people throughout their careers. We'll be updating the strategy annually with the next refresh in July 2021. I'm pleased to share that as part of that work, the Workforce Programme are developing a 3-year recruitment and retention strategy to ensure we correctly identify and prioritise recruitment requirements needed over that period. It's vital that probation staff are properly rewarded for their work, and I'm pleased to hear that Napo colleagues and other recognised trade union colleagues have been working tirelessly on your behalf towards the agreement for the 2020-21 pay award. As you will have heard today, pay progression for eligible staff will be received in your October pay and backdated to the 1st of April 2020. Other elements of the award are still under negotiation, but we hope to be able to bring you a settled position shortly. Turning now to the Probation Reform Programme. The Probation Service plays a crucial role in protecting the public while supervising offenders in the community or following release from prison. We're already delivering on our commitments to hire more probation officers, to transform probation leadership, and to draw on the expertise of the private and voluntary sectors to provide rehabilitation services. We should recognise the innovation and forward thinking that CRCs have brought to services such as unpaid work, and have been rightly praised by the Probation Inspectorate for that. We are committed to retaining the best of this progress and innovation, and there is much we can learn from the expertise of CRC staff who will be transferring into the NPS. Plans for completing the necessary transition activity to prepare the NPS for our planned change have been developed, and I am confident that we can meet the timeline to June 2021. We've already delivered part of the new model in Wales, where the NPS is now managing all offenders. This has allowed us to learn valuable lessons for the transition in England. Our changes will ensure the probation service is a rich and rewarding place to work, where people want to stay and aspire to have a career in probation. We've increased the probation budget by 17% this year to over £1.1 billion, and will ensure the probation service continues to have the resources it needs to protect the public and reduce reoffending. For change to be successful, the people most impacted by that change need to understand what it means for you, and wherever possible, to have the chance to influence that change. So far, just over half of you feel we've got that communication right. I'm committed to making sure that the teams share more sooner, including via Katie, Ian and their teams within Napo. I recognise that staff want more detail about the reforms, especially in relation to training, role and place of work, and the programme communications team is working closely with subject experts to develop when this information can be shared with staff. I wanted to end by sharing with you 2 stories that were recently shared with me. The first was in relation to a doorstep visit, where the changes from COVID meant that the probation officer went to the doorstep, and it was by going to the doorstep that they discovered there was an unsupervised child who was 3 in the house on his own. And then a story about a probation officer and many others who were in work that day, and they went and they found a man coming to the probation office who'd just taken an overdose. He had nowhere else to go. These, for me, are examples of the incredible work that you do every day, and it is an honour to be the Minister for Probation, continuing to work with you to help those who need it most in our communities.
Thank you so much, Minister. Members, the Minister has kindly agreed to answer some questions, and we've already had some come in for you, which is great. So I will read them to you because I don't believe you can see those in front of you, although other members can. And I will read them one at a time if that's okay, because they're all on very different topics, and I think it will be easier that way. So our first question comes from Helen McGuinness. I don't assess that COVID secure is a genuine possibility in prison OMUs when we're discouraged from mask wearing and we're coming into contact with wings of hundreds of prisoners. How do you reconcile the use of easy catchphrases with reality?
Helen, thanks very much for your question. And the work that people are doing in prisons is absolutely vital. Both the work of probation officers and our prison officers, who I know are doing a tremendous amount. I should say at the outset, in prisons, we were anticipating at the start of the pandemic. The estimates were really quite shocking. We were told to expect in prisons 2,500 to 3,500 deaths, and it's because of all of those people who were working in prisons and the hard work that they have done has meant that although obviously we've had some tragic circumstances in prisons and we have seen a few deaths, we've only seen 23, and the contrast between what we were expecting and what prison officers have managed to deliver has been quite remarkable. And it is absolutely fundamental, as you say, Helen, that we ensure that we protect all those who are working in our prisons. And we are looking again at our frameworks. We were, as you know, we were most prisons were moving to stage 3, the stage 3 framework, and hoping to move to stage 2. And we're revisiting our frameworks, given that the pandemic and the virus incidents are rising in the community, and therefore in our prisons as well. So we're looking very, very carefully at the frameworks and the operations within prison. And on the particular issue that you raise about masks, we are looking at that very carefully, what PPE is appropriate and when. And we recognise, of course, that whilst probation officers in the community can and are doing quite a lot of work at home, that we will have to think very carefully about those probation officers coming into our prisons.
Thank you, Minister. Our next question is from Richard Clark. Disabled staff continue to be discriminated against because of the service's refusal to spend money on reasonable adjustments, which is because of the hangover left by austerity. How can you rectify the mistakes?
Well, Richard, thank you very much for your question. That's obviously a very broad question. I think it is vital that we have a representative probation service, a service that's representative of society, and that includes disabled staff and staff from all different backgrounds. So I'm sorry if you feel that there are disparities in the system and things that we haven't managed to deal with, and I would be very, very happy to take forward any particular points, Richard, that you've got. If you want to feed them through Katie in due course, I'd be very happy to respond to them more formally.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sure you know that we'll definitely take that up. Our next question is from Robbie Bourget. I do not think that COVID-19 safe is likely within courts for probation, as we are the last ones courts consider, and as a result we are often left being required to be too close with others who are maskless.
Robbie, thanks. It's really good to hear your concerns so that I can feed them back specifically to HMCTS about how you are working in courts. Of course, you shouldn't be the last people who are being considered. There have been I know all courts have been assessed to ensure that they are COVID safe, and you will know that we haven't opened all our courts, and in fact have opened other courts, Nightingale courts, where we consider they can be more COVID secure. But if there are particular issues in any particular courts, I would be very keen to hear about those so that we can address your particular concerns.
Thank you. Yesterday we heard that the probation service is broken, that staff are overworked and underpaid. There has been no investment in estates or staff. This service relies on goodwill. Can you please explain why PQIPs will stay? And apologies, I should have said that comes from Vicky Oakley.
Vicky, thanks very much for your question. I think probation do a fantastic job, and I think that should be recognised. So you mentioned being overworked, and as I mentioned in my speech, we are significantly recruiting for probation officers because we know that the more staff that we have, the more that the workload will reduce, and we do want to bring the workload down. So as you will have heard me mention, we've already got 500 probation officers in training and want to increase that to 1,000, and that is with a view of bringing the workforce up to ensure that the caseloads come down. Obviously, as we integrate as well the CRCs with the MPS, there's more scope for variety and different types of caseload. And also, given the CRC's integration into the MPS, that gives us further scope for the other point that you raised in relation to the estate, because it's really important that we look at our buildings and that probation is delivered from the most appropriate premises, and that is absolutely what we are doing at the moment, looking at the estate more broadly, together with the integration that's going on at the moment.
Thank you. Chris Pearson asks, sometimes it feels as though probation is the poor relation to the prison service, to HMCTS and to the judiciary. How can you ensure we are treated as equals in the Ministry of Justice?
Well, Chris, in my eyes, you are equals. I have three portfolios. I have youth justice, I have probation, and I have prisons. And in my eyes, all of those are absolutely critical to the working of our criminal justice system. And I think you are in probation in a very exciting moment. You're working at a time of significant opportunity and change. And we are working extremely hard in the Ministry of Justice on all the things that probation is delivering. So you will know that we are incorporating the CRCs and developing the unified model. That is something I know of interest to me and those more senior than me within government, and we're working very hard to get that right. As part of that, we have the dynamic framework, £100 million in investment in the services that will be contracted for to help turn people's lives around. And a very big part of my role at the moment, and much of my time is spent on putting together a reducing reoffending strategy, of which probation is the absolute linchpin, because it's through the work that you are doing every day that we manage to protect the public and reduce reoffending and turn individuals' lives around. So I don't think at all that probation is the poor relation. I think we will see over the coming years a more integrated service within HMPPS as a whole, and I think the work that you do is absolutely critical to that.
Thank you. Stephen Bradley asks, probation training is currently not fit for purpose. We used to be an organisation of continuous development and practice-led innovation under a separate directorate. HMPPS governance has stifled this model. Will you change it?
Yes, basically. We are looking very carefully at workforce, both in terms of the number of the people we recruit, the avenues into probation, how we can improve and increase access, and improve training and support throughout your time as probation officers. So we are looking very carefully at continued professional development, how we deliver that, how we support you and you support each other in a continuous way in your roles. I think you make a really, really important point, because we value the work that you're doing every day. But it's important that we give you the tools and the support to enable you to do your jobs as well as you can. And we're looking at not only training, but we're looking at what we can learn from all the experiences that we've had recently to improve the service. And that's critical to get your feedback on that as well. So we are looking at how we learn from the changes to the unified model in Wales. We're looking at the experience that we've gone through in COVID, and can we learn from the methods of working in relation to that? And we are looking at how we learn from the CRCs, and together we will bring that all together to try and improve the way we deliver services and the support that we can give to staff to improve those services.
Thank you. David Rayho asks, I would like to be assured that innovative projects and better technology developed in some CRCs will be moved across to the NPS in June 2021.
David, I agree with you. I think that the CRCs brought in a lot of innovation, and I have met with many of the leaders of the CRCs to discuss what innovations they have done that we can take on board. We've also had external reports, an external investigation as to how we can learn from the innovations that the CRCs have brought with us. And I mentioned as well, we're not just looking at that. Obviously, we've had an increase in technology through the COVID period, and we're looking at how do we introduce that, if possible, if it's appropriate, in normal business ways of working going forward. So all of that work is ongoing. I should say it is a massive project to integrate everything back into the unified model. And so it won't be possible immediately to take the benefit of all the innovations. We want to make sure that on day one in June 2021 that the system works and that people can continue talking to the service users. But as time develops, we will absolutely be ensuring that we benefit from the technologies that we're aware of through the CRCs and otherwise.
Minister, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, for your contribution and for answering those questions. I know that there will be many members who have many more questions that they would wish to answer, if only we had all week. But we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we look forward to raising all of the issues that our members have raised, whether they got to ask their question directly or not, as we continue to engage with you and your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you.